Victor,
Okay.
welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me. How are you
Oh,
doing?
thanks for being on. Thanks for being on. I'm very well, thanks. Very well. You're the first deaf person on the podcast, so I'm very, very grateful that you're the first person because you're very knowledgeable in dev work. I've worked with you before, and I love the way you think about things. You're very strategic in your approach. And I have this new series called Working with SEOs, where I speak with professionals who've worked with SEOs and get their experience with having worked with SEOs. And you being the first
Hmm.
deaf person, I'm very grateful for that. So thank you so much for being on. I want to
No
cover a
problem.
number of topics. I'm going to start it with just your experience with SEOs, and then I want to have a scenario and get your take on it. The scenario is essentially a tech audit, and I want to get your take on
Hmm.
working with SEOs when they have a tech audit provided to them. We can touch on dev sprints and also SEO
Hmm.
reporting, and those are the essentially the topics I want to cover for today. So to start
Hmm.
off with, how would you describe your experience with SEOs?
It was it was very interesting. I think at first I haven't worked with SEOs before we met at IG, and I kind of heard that there are these magical people who sometimes work with search engines and they optimize stuff, but I didn't really know what is the stuff that is to be optimized. Like Google goes, it searches your site, and then magic happens. But I was pretty amazed by how much is there behind it, really, and how many processes are there that you can sort of fine tune. It was really interesting. I kind of enjoyed that part of the job. When we were working together, we were working on a marketing website, and I was on the dev side of that, and so I could help the SEO team with little tweaks to the sitemap and other components so that Google likes the site better. And I thought it was quite interesting how you can influence those results and what sort of dashboards are available to check how your site is going and how are your keywords tracking and whatnot. Um, I have used that knowledge a little bit later on some personal sites, and it was quite interesting to think back that, oh yeah, I remember that we did this on a real big site, and I can maybe do this on my own little blog and see if Google likes it better.
I'm very glad to hear that you enjoyed it overall, the experience working with SEOs. I find that my experience working with developers is always um, sketchy at first because it's almost like two different ways of thinking, trying to find the best approach to communicate, work together, and do something great for the website that we're working on. Do you find that SEOs work very differently to the way developers work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think maybe the problem space is quite different. It's not maybe a traditional space that most engineers come across easily. I think it's a very specialized area. So it's things like when you need to work with content, for example, to make sure that the little paragraph that will show up under your Google search results are the right paragraph that you want people to see, then that's not really
Mm.
something that an engineer needs to consider on a day-to-day basis, I think.
Mm.
Once you understand the rules behind all this and why how things sort of fit together and you get a bit of direction, I think it was a quite enjoyable piece of engineering work for me personally. I think it's more that developers don't necessarily understand it at first. It's a bit foreign, I think, for most.
Mm. What do you think SEOs can do to like help bridge that knowledge gap for developers? So, for example, in fact, we can come on to tech audits now. Let's say we have a scenario where we've commissioned an agency to carry out a tech audit, and we've received a tech audit. From our point of view, an SEO's point of view, we're essentially just going to ideally pass on the tech audits, the parts that are relevant to developers, and have them implement it. That's from our point of view, but we don't necessarily understand the everything else from you guys' point of view. So please enlighten us. How is it when you receive a tech audit from SEOs?
Yep, yeah, good question. I think one mismatch that I can see sort of emerging in here is that in these scenarios, the developers expect to get some sort of guidance from you on what needs to be done. But what you tell developers, what you want them to do, may not be how it will exactly look like in the end result. So there may be a little bit of mismatch. What I found best when working with teams here at Atlassian is that if you sort of give them a little bit of story or direction on, this is the piece of work that you need to do, and this is why you do it, so they understand what is the goal that you're kind of working towards, then it's much easier to think about, what is it that you're actually asking for. Another maybe tip is to try not to explain what exactly you expect them to do, but what is the outcome that you want to see, and why is that outcome good for search engines, and then they can figure out the implementation. In most cases, I think depending on what sort of site or portal engine you're working with, it may be just a little bit of configuration or maybe a little bit of dev work. In some cases, it can be quite involved if it comes in quite late in the process, if the system is not really prepared for this kind of extensibility. So I guess my answer is it really depends on what sort of system and what sort of engineering teams you're working with. But again, I find that if you give a lot of context on what is the outcome that you're looking for, and why is that good, so they understand why is it positive to work towards that, I think that can help.
We also, within our tech audits, we also can be quite prescriptive with the information that we provide. So for example, we would show the problem, and then we, the SEOs, will provide the solution. Do you find that to be ideal, or do you prefer that you guys are the ones that provide the solution to the problem?
It can be a bit of a source of friction. I think there are different type of engineers. Some engineers like really sort of fixed rules, so that they know exactly what is the piece that they need to sort of complete, and then it gives satisfaction to sort of burn down that backlog and just complete it as efficiently as possible. Some engineers like to have the problem and a sort of a target goal, I guess, or just describe how the output needs to look like, and let them figure out how it is best done. I assume it's somewhere in the middle, so it's a bit of a gray area. I think. It really depends on what sort of team you're working with. At the end of the day, you do need to tell people how does the output look like that you need in place after the work is completed. I would probably err on the side of not going too deep into solutioning when you present the problem, and let them work on that, and let them sort of come back for more information if they don't know how to approach it. Ideally, that should be there.
Yeah. So from an SEO point of view, one of the issues we have with other departments is that we're brought in a project too late. Let's say a site is launching, we're brought in just before the site launches. And from our point of view, we say there is a whole load of work that needs to be carried out. Ideally, we want to be brought in as early as possible, ideally from briefing. And when we have a tech audit, we tend to have developers brought in after we've received the tech audit, so after the problems have been identified. Do you think that's the right time to have developers brought in, or should it be at a different point?
Yeah, good question. I'm not a project or a product manager. They can probably tell you their views on how this is supposed to work. But yeah, I agree. Like if SEO is really an afterthought and you have an existing system, maybe with lots of customization, it's going to be always harder to sort of retrofit that to what you need. Versus if you have those requirements upfront, then engineering teams can build those requirements into the system as they build it. I think ideally you would want SEO around earlier, so you have that guidance. I assume it's resourcing problem. So again, it's probably more a project management kind of issue. It's interesting that if I understand correctly, that after the tech audit, you give your report, and then more developers are added to the project to sort of deal with those issues. Again, it depends. If you're optimizing for that, then I expect that some of those developers will be new to the product or to the system. So maybe they are missing that additional context on how things already work. So they not only need to implement something new, but also work out how to implement that with a system that they haven't worked with potentially. In that case, you do probably want to give a lot of direction on how exactly things should fit together and how it should work, so that people can focus on implementing those things rather than all the other aspects of the problem.
Let's come on to dev sprints. This is something that I find quite interesting. From my experience, dev sprints are like every 2 weeks. Is that right, or does it depend? Does it change department to department?
Yeah, it can depend. Ideally, teams sort of self-organize a little bit on working out what's the best iteration for them. But yes, 2 sprints agile, 2 weeks agile sprints are pretty common, I'd say.
So how important is it for developers to be very rigid and stick to their dev sprint?
Yeah, that's a good question. Ideally, when you're working with a 2-week sprint, you would want commitment from leadership or management that for those 2 weeks, if you have a plan and someone accepts those plans, then those plans will be in place, and there's not going to be something flipping it over. That rarely happens. I think there's lots of places where there are last minute requests coming in, or you need something done as soon as possible. From the sort of project management perspective, it would be great if these requests are arriving in a way that they can wait up to 2 weeks, because then the engineering teams have a chance to sort of deal with newly upcoming requests in the next sprint, but not in the one that they have already started and committed to some plan. So the whole idea of the sprints is that you do a bit of upfront planning. You decide what are the tasks that you're ready to take on, and then you have 2 weeks roughly to implement that. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, you reflect on how it went, and then maybe improve some processes for next time over longer periods. And if out of the 2 weeks, which is 10 days, you spend 6 or maybe 5 days going to your plan, and the other 4 days is dealing with random things, that can be quite disturbing to the planning process, to the team velocity, and so it gets harder to sort of manage the time and the output of the engineering teams.
That's interesting, because I've a previous developer I worked with, I just assumed that as soon as we have tasks, that we can just pass them onto him, and they will sort of fix it. And in my mind, I almost had it as a situation where it's they receive requests and they work on it ticket by ticket. So the more tickets they have, the better it is for them, because they have work. So if I can provide them with tons of tickets, then that's great for them and also great for me as an SEO. But it seems as though that first has to go through a planning, right? A planning phase to have the priority in place. Do you tend to work on literally everything across a business? So both from a marketing point of view and also infrastructural point of view, with like, let's say, marketing point of view.
So in my current role, I'm pretty far from marketing, but I do work across different departments a little bit, and so requests do come from different places. I think it does, like, yes. So what you explained, it does happen. I think there are some engineers who that sort of that style of work suits well, where they always jump on the most recent thing that appears to be the most urgent. Sometimes it's not the most urgent, and they get a lot of things done in a short amount of time. Some other engineers need a bit more focus time, or maybe it's not even the engineers. Maybe it's some projects where maybe the project is not straightforward, where everything is given and you just need to go ahead and implement it. And there are a lot of kind of engineering work where you're given a problem and a rough solution, and so you need to experiment to see if the proposed solution even works. If it did work, then you maybe need to work through some edge cases or some other issues, and implement all the requirements that maybe pop up here and there. And so if you have all this sort of experimentation or experimental work planned out for the 2 weeks, then it's when these other incoming requests can really throw you off the trajectory that you're already on. But yeah, as I said, some engineers enjoy that style of work. Even Agile has different different kind of implementations, I guess. The 2-week sprints that we were talking about is a classic Scrum implementation, where you do some sprint ceremonies at the start, where you do your planning, and then at the end you sort of reflect back on what happened. A different style is Kanban, where you have basically a bag of issues, and then you just burn through them, because you can start basically anywhere, and you just pick one up, you complete it, and then you go to the next one, and you just try to minimize how much you have in progress. So I guess if there are teams or maybe projects where teams can expect that there's going to be more of similar kind of tasks coming their way, then maybe they can set up in a way that they can manage that quite efficiently. But again, some teams work in a different way, and then we try to push some other type of work onto them mid-sprint, which is where it gets hard to sort of get their planned work done or the incoming requests done, really. So I guess it's a bit of a project and team management issue sometimes.
What would you say is the best way for an SEO or SEO related work to be incorporated within dev sprints?
Good question. Like you mentioned tech audits. If you get hundreds of issues that need to be resolved, I assume that they're not 100 different unique kind of issues. They're probably maybe 5 or 10 different issues across 100 things. I think I would recommend experimenting a little bit and see what works with which teams. I think the earlier you can bring those requirements, the better, because then it can be incorporated into regular planning. I think potentially embedding SEOs with development teams could also work. If maybe that there is work to be done, but the development team hasn't done it yet, then maybe they accept the work, but they won't know where to start, so they will need that initial guidance. Embedding may also help if it's a bit of an unknown type of work, then you would ask the development team to do something. They would implement that something, which may not turn out exactly how you wanted it. And then to shorten that feedback loop, you could either wait until the next sprint starts after you've given your feedback that that's not exactly how it should have been. Or, if you have a chance to sort of reflect on it pretty soon after it was implemented, then it's easier to sort of course correct.
As far as reporting goes, do you ever see SEO related reports, or when you were working with SEOs, did you ever see SEO related reports on the projects that you worked on?
Like in terms of technical reports, like search console like metrics and dashboards and stuff.
Yeah, performance report. Yeah.
I have seen some of them. I think it's not something that I feel is highly advertised outside of SEO departments or teams. I think there's a lot of interesting content in there. I have a personal site where I have Google Search Console, and it has a lot of really useful information that is a little bit hidden, I guess, if you're not looking for it or you don't know where to look for. So I think it's quite interesting to sort of socialize that there's all this data available. Engineers love data. And it's quite interesting what sort of conclusions you can draw from it.
Do you think like it will be useful for SEOs to share this information? Like let's say not necessarily all of them, but the relevant ones. Will it be useful to see performance reports so that you guys say, okay, this is what this is how we're impacting search?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think I just mentioned engineers love data. The only other thing one other thing that we like even more is to see on data what impact did we achieve. So if there's a graph that says you're 70% good and then it goes up to 95% good, I think that's great. And then you can explain how that work has contributed to that. I think that can be really sort of empowering and inspiring.
Cool. Okay. I completely agree as well. I think as far as performance report goes, we tend to share performance reports, SEO performance reports within SEOs and within marketing, but we tend not to do so for the departments outside of marketing. And it's a mistake, I think, and something that we definitely need to rectify as an industry. I want to get your take now on AI. I am sure you've seen that with the rise of AI, search is going to change. I have two questions around AI technology. The first is, how do you think AI will affect search? Either Google or any other search engine?
Yeah, good question. I'm not a huge AI expert. I think it has a lot of interesting usages, and you can see with ChatGPT that it becomes very easily accessible these days, and it's pretty powerful how it can interpret what you mean, which has been traditionally hard. Like sometimes it's a bit of a challenge with search engines to try and guess what are the right keywords that the search engine expects so that it can find the content that you were actually looking for. I expect that maybe with AI technologies, this becomes a little bit better, that maybe you can give a bit more context, maybe it's a bit more free form, and it can better infer what is it actually that you're thinking of or talking about, and it can give you more relevant content. The other sort of direction I can imagine is if you feed back all the sort of user tracking data on how people interact with your search engine, then maybe those AIs can find sort of better better results for you to present to you. and maybe that's how AI will help with more presenting more relevant content, I guess, based on more input than what we traditionally have.
What about people's browsing experience? Do you think it will change it from people using, let's say, Google to search to using something like TikTok? So TikTok, for example, have they're promoting their own, if you like, search engine, and that facility, that ability is now coming to prominence. And within the SEO industry, we're thinking search is going to expand, or some people are thinking search is going to expand from it being Google dominant to it being spread across several different platforms. So with tools like ChatGPT, and also social sites like TikTok. So do you think AI, how do you think it will affect people's browsing experience?
Yeah, good question. I think it's hard to tell without crystal ball, really, and unfortunately I don't have one around. But I think what's really powerful with Google is you open up your Chrome, you type some keywords in your search bar, and it will go and find stuff for you. And that thing can be on YouTube, and it could be on Facebook, it could be on random websites, and it just kind of works. I think if people need to think about which place do I need to go to search for something to find the right content, I think that's going to cause a lot of friction. If there is something else other than Google who comes up with a nice search experience where you just give it your search phrase and it knows what you're after, that could potentially work. I think Google has quite a big head start on search. I maybe it could be that others figure out something awesomer. I think, but I do think that personally, Google is pretty powerful in how you just give them that this is what I look for, go and find it wherever. So as long as something can replicate that in a more efficient way, I guess people might trend towards that solution.
Well, Viktor, thank you so much for your time. It's been brilliant speaking with you. I want to ask is there a question that you would love to ask SEOs to get a better understanding of SEO or the way SEOs think? No worries if nothing comes to mind.
Yeah, I think it's always an interesting challenge when you create something and you want to sort of advertise that to people, and some of the cheaper ways is to make it findable in Google easily. And so I think when you arrive to that point as a non-SEO person, it's always a surprise that I don't know where to start. So I think if SEOs can help, I know there's a lot of resources out there. I think it's not super visible if you're not looking for it. So I think definitely educating other engineers on how do you make something look really good in Google, and how do you make it rank high. I think that's a powerful skill. And maybe it's trainings, maybe it's more advertising from SEO folks like yourself, and so that others can more easily work with you all. I think maybe a lot of people, maybe smaller businesses, are not necessarily aware that this is something they should be doing. Where I think if you get it right, it can be really powerful for getting more sort of attraction to your website. So I'm not too sure what is the answer or even the question I want SEOs to help with, but something more around raising awareness of the importance of SEO, I guess.
It's funny you say that, because that is exactly what I believe as well. I think as an industry, we have great communication inside the industry, raising awareness of like a better way of doing things, a new approach, etc. But outside of SEO, this is something that we definitely need to work on, and I find that it impacts the way people communicate back to SEOs, because going back to the tech audit example, when we have a tech audit, our aim is to have it implemented, the recommendations implemented. So essentially, we consider it as something, as an agenda that we just need to pass it on to the relevant departments to implement. But they may have no idea, for example, of why they're going ahead and implementing this, why it's more important than the work they've been working on. Why they should even care about SEO. And I think we don't necessarily provide that background knowledge to different departments. And I see that as something that is going to improve over time. In fact, improve in the very short term.
Yeah, I think money is always a powerful tool to explain people why something is better than something else. I guess if you can make it, if you can put it in terms of money, that, if you put this much investment in SEO, you can expect that you get this much organic traffic, or on the other hand, you can pay for this much, adverts and stuff like that, and that would generate maybe roughly the same amount of traffic. Then people can weigh up on long term which one is a better investment.
Yeah. Viktor, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you online?
I think LinkedIn is a good source. I try to kind of keep it updated. I think that's a good source. I have a blog that went stale about the time I moved to Australia 4 years ago. So there's links on my LinkedIn profile to that, but there's not much sort of recent relevant content on it. So yeah, again, LinkedIn is probably the best.
LinkedIn, okay. I'll have the link in the description so people can find you and get in touch. Well, thank you so much, Viktor.
Okay,
have
cool.
a good
Thank you for
evening
having me.
this evening, your time, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And we'll catch up again. We'll catch up again soon.
Okay, all right. It was great talking to you again.
Cheers. Bye now.